what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur Exchange on the Mesh Podcast Network, a monthly conversation about startups and small business with ideas, tools, and advice to operate your business more effectively. On today's show, we've had a lot of companies and startups on the podcast, and most of them get started in order to solve a problem. But this is the first time that we've had someone start a company because their spouse had smelling problems. Well, we've got Megan Eddings with Accel Lifestyle. She's going to be with us to explain how she resolved the stink and started a business. And, of course, we'll also have our Small Business of the Month feature, where we'll recommend some interesting businesses that you should be checking out. Hello, my name is Jeff Newell. I'm your host and director of the Manufacturing Solutions Center in Conover, North Carolina. I'm joined by my co-host, Gary Muller, who is Executive Dean of Economic Development and Corporate Education at Catawba Valley Community College in Hickory. Gary, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, Jeff, as long as you don't want to talk about Panther football or Wake Forest football.
Yeah, well, it's
okay. It's early.
It's early in the season, but even if football doesn't happen here in beautiful North Carolina, at least it's cooled off a little bit. Maybe we'll actually have some fall.
I'll tell you. That's just what we were talking about just a minute ago. It's fall here, at least for the day, which is good considering it was such a hot summer.
Well, talking about hot summers, our guest today is in Houston, Texas. Our guest is Megan Eddings. Megan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Yeah, we had definitely a super hot summer, and being from the Northeast, from Rhode Island, every summer I say, oh man, I've acclimated to the weather. And then like this past summer happens, I don't think anybody acclimated to it.
Well, a little bit of background on Megan, and I had the chance to meet Megan about a month ago at a textile conference, and she's done some work with our Manufacturing Solutions Center in the past. And did you do karaoke with some of our people as well, or is that just our friend Tanya? Does she go solo on karaoke?
I've danced with Devin Steele, but I've not done karaoke with the textile crew yet.
Well, your time will come. Megan attended the University of Virginia and has a chemistry background.
Another ACC
person, but she's in Texas now. But the ACC could be in Texas.
You never know. That's exactly right.
She's created not one but two companies, Accel Unite and Accel Lifestyle. She's got a vision, and she's got a great attitude. She's an industry leader in public health, entrepreneurship, textiles. She serves as a resource to the medical community, the military. She is a guest lecturer at Rice University, the University of Virginia, Houston Community College, and the University of Houston, focusing on science, entrepreneurship, and sustainability. She is the winner of the Women's Business Enterprise National Council's 2022 pitch competition. And as I said, I had a chance to hear her speak about a month ago and really appreciated her enthusiasm and passion. So
that's
Megan,
a wow.
So anyway,
that's amazing, Megan.
I've really built you up, Megan.
I was going to say.
So anyway, I hope you can live up to that.
Actually, I'm sitting up a little straighter.
Okay. I was going to say, I'm not going to talk the rest of the podcast.
Well, I think, Megan, you tell us a little bit about Accel Lifestyle and how did you come about, what is it, and how did you come about to start it?
Yeah, my husband loves hearing when like the beginning of any business pitch competition I used to do is it all started with my husband's stinky t-shirt. Look, you mentioned, my background's in chemistry, and I used to work in a lab. I thought I was going to work in a lab the rest of my life, whether it be basically finding a cure for cancer when I was in my 20s. That's what I wanted to do. My roommate passed away at UVA from cancer. So I said, that's what I'm going to dedicate my life to. Well, one day I walked out of Brown where I was working. I'm like, I am way too outgoing to be working in a lab the rest of my life. So I moved here to Houston to sell medical equipment for Siemens Medical. And about 11 years ago, I met my husband. We're super into fitness. We were then, we are now. And I was just washing his workout clothes. He was doing CrossFit really early in the morning, wearing that material we all like to wear that wicks away the sweat. It feels cool, but it holds on to the stink. So it literally kept me up at night. Like, I can't believe that I'm selling $3 million MRI machines to MD Anderson, like it's no big deal. And we don't have workout clothes that don't stink. So Accel Lifestyle took about 3.5 years of a lot of testing, a lot of samples made. But we launched Accel Lifestyle in August 2019, selling clothes made with my Prima fabric that is odor resistant and 100% sourced and made here in the United States.
And you solved the problem. You're still with your husband.
happily, yes.
So and now what does as far as Accel Lifestyle at this point? And tell us about the various products that you're making and how's the business doing?
Yeah, it's going great. Someone would have asked me in August 2019, as business, like, where do you want to be? How big do you want to get? What are your goals? I would have said back then that, we want to be bigger than Lululemon, and every piece of textile has some kind of science component to it, and everything's ethically made for me, which means no sweatshops. Now what I say is I love creating textiles. So as far as, yes, Accel Lifestyles, we're in about 30 locations across the country. Talbot's, the women's clothing store, carries our line, and they actually we just delivered a second order for them. And so right now we're carrying a lot of like country clubs, high-end boutiques, Talbot's, but we also are looking at creating textiles for other very well-known retail brands that are out there. So those are some conversations we're having now. As far as what we sell, simple t-shirts and tank tops for men and women. It was started as workout clothes, but now what I find is instead of being a fitness apparel brand, we're more of a lifestyle brand. So people wear a lot of our clothes when they're traveling, under their blazers at work, just to kind of keep that, lack of better words, fresh smell throughout the day.
Well, and you've got a real commitment to sustainability, and you're from a supply chain perspective, you're focused on domestics as much as you can focus on domestic at this point in time. Is that just sort of the initial vision for what you were doing, or how did you evolve to that? Is that part of your science background?
Yeah, actually nothing to do with science. So what happened was, when Kyle had the stinky workout clothes, way before I thought I'd ever have the confidence or the knowledge to be an entrepreneur, I just went to Google and just first thing I typed in is, who else has an odor resistant fabric solution, shirts out there. And just like Google or the World Wide Web or whatever you want to call it, I eventually kind of got into the dark web of sweatshops. And so as I got into the dark web of sweatshops and how most of our clothes are made, I vowed, and I crystal clear remember thinking that I have to put my head on the pillow every single night and know that every decision I make personally and for the business focuses on humanity and the environment. So at the time, I was a company of one, and the only way to make sure that I wasn't using a sweatshop was to actually hop on an airplane and go visit everyone in my supply chain, everyone who makes the fibers, everyone who makes the fabric, everyone who makes the apparel. And so because I was a company of one and limited finances, I chose Made in USA at the time, just to make sure that there were no sweatshops in my supply chain.
And has that been a challenge for you to make it domestically here in the U.S. or how's that worked for you?
I could write a book on that. It was just as difficult to find a 100% sourced and made ethical supply chain domestically than it was to invent my fabric. Just as difficult. Quick little story. We had two factories, Cut and Sew. For those of you that don't know Cut and Sew, they basically make clothes. So my fabric's made in North Carolina. My apparel is made in California. We had two factories lined up in California because I was trying to find a spot on the East Coast. It wasn't working out so well in terms of quality. And so a girl on my team, we flew out to California to meet with the owners of both factories. They'd already had our samples. They were already had some fabric. They had our patterns. Long story short, we actually had to show up to one of the factories the day after we met with them, unannounced, with a U-Haul, just me and the girl. I'm 5'5", she's 5'1". So we're not like, we're not intimidating looking people. But we showed up to the factory unannounced in our U-Haul, and demanded everything back because we found out during our meeting, we read between the lines, and they actually were operating a sweatshop in some of their facilities. So just because things are made in the United States, I had a rude awakening that there are sweatshops here domestically as well.
Well, kudos for you for doing the legwork to identify the right ones at that point in time.
That's a real commitment.
I say, so that was early on. That was back in 2018. And here we are in 2023. And we all come up with challenges every day. Every day there's a challenge, personal, professional, whatever. I go back to that day and I'm like, if I can show up in downtown LA with a U-Haul unannounced, I can do anything. So
you might be 5'5", but you do work out. I mean, you probably you got a little bit of muscle there.
Well, and I have the Rhode Island accent and the deep voice, so that helps as well. Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
So when you got to 2020, we got into the pandemic, and I guess sort of two questions. I would think that when you talk about Accel lifestyle turning into more of maybe a lifestyle type brand with the way people were using their products, we don't want to sit around and say, the pandemic was good for somebody or had some silver linings. I don't know if that had a impact on Accel lifestyle, but also it opened up an opportunity for you to pivot into some of the medical garments as well. So talk to us a little bit about how that worked and Accel United and how did that happen? What were you thinking and how did you make it happen?
I don't think I was thinking. I think I was just reacting. To be honest, there was not a lot of thought going on. It was just, but no, 2020 will always be just a wild year for all of us for so many reasons. I was blessed to have a consultant, a fashion consultant out in New Jersey. And she started with us in 2018 and her sister was a nurse in New York City. I woke up, it was March of 2020. Houston had just shut down. And I woke up on a Friday morning and my consultant texted me and said, hey, CDC just came out last night and said, healthcare workers are running out of face masks. She, of course, was hearing all the experiences of her sister. What if you take your fabric and make it into face masks? So I think we were one of the first companies in the country to do it because I just thought, holy crap, I have all this fabric here in Houston and in California. I can figure out a pattern of how to make a face mask. We just made T-shirts. And I worked in hospitals for 14 years before becoming an entrepreneur. So everything was just lined up. So we had our first sample mask made that day. And within a week and a half, we got an order for about 44,000 face masks from a big hospital here in Houston. But the really crazy story was about a week after that, a friend of a friend, like a girl I kind of know here in town, in her free, so I have two dogs and they're apparently excited about my story right now. If you hear them barking in the background.
Didn't know what that was.
Yeah, that was my husband. My husband. And so she said, hey, Meg, in my free time, I mentor military men and women who are retiring and to, join the civilian world. And I happened to have a call with this guy the day before. This is now the first week in April of 2020. She's like, I saw you on the news in Houston. I see you're making face masks. They're in desperate need of face masks. So she said, can you have a call with them? I said, sure. Well, as an entrepreneur, we were making face masks for about a week and a half. Of the 9,000 we had made, probably only 4,000 were actually usable from quality control. But I'm like, I'll have to call the guy. He's now one of my best friends. And he said, Meg, we need 50,000 face masks delivered, landed in Virginia Beach, Hawaii, and San Diego in 7 days. And so I got off the phone. I called a bunch of my domestic buddies here in town that I knew were making face masks. And we actually had 50,000 masks delivered in 6 days. So that actually spread like wildfire. So that was the Navy, but then we started making masks for the Navy SEALs and the Marines. And for me, people say, 2020, we had a lot of, business growth, but what was the most important, what was the most special part for me for 2020, hands down, no questions asked, was working with the military. My brother's a Marine. My dad always wanted to be in the military, but he was legally blind, so he couldn't. And so even my fabric, my anti-stink fabric, I always said, man, one day, like this will be on the military. This will be on the military. And so to actually make face masks and be part of the military was one of the biggest blessings for me as a person. And then Accel Unite, you mentioned, is also 2020. By August of 2020, we basically were a mask machine. We were churning and burning and just making them, and, you know, great supply chain, awesome people. And I got this call, you know, a weird number came through, and I answer all of them. Hello, this is Megan, and it happened to be a supply chain manager of a large hospital system, one that I hadn't worked for, but he knew I was making masks. And he said, you know, we need 50,000 face masks. I said, no problem. And Jeff, you heard me say this before, and every talk and every podcast I give, I say, if there's one thing you take away from everything I say, it is the next thing I'm about to say. Something made me ask, and I call that something God, but something made me ask this guy, what else do you need? We weren't offering anything else. And he said, actually, Meg, we're in desperate need of reusable isolation gowns. I did not know what that was, but I didn't say a word. So I went to Google quickly and typed it in, those plastic single-use gowns that our healthcare heroes are wearing. And make a very long story short, I worked with their infection control team and designed a reusable gown that's tested up to 200 washes in a commercial laundry system, and it's patent pending in 153 countries. The key to that question was, what else do you need? Is we weren't offering anything else, but we all have relationships with people that can help. So that question, if I did not ask that question, I wouldn't even be having this conversation right now. And so they needed these gowns, as most hospitals did, because 95% of all isolation gowns that are used in the United States are actually those single-use plastic gowns that, you know, the healthcare heroes wear for a couple of seconds to a couple of minutes. And that's awesome.
Well, you know, one of the things that became very apparent during the pandemic was, number one, the lack of PPE mask gowns, and also the fact that very little of it was made here in the United States. So the fact that you were able to do that was pretty impressive.
It's amazing how fast you were able to turn it around and get in production.
The only reason that was able to happen is because we talked about it in the beginning of this conversation. I made a vow to have everything ethically made, and that happened to be made in USA. So that decision back in 2017 to make everything made in USA, what was able to have me pivot so quickly and help our frontline workers in 2020.
Well, go ahead, Gary.
I was going to say, with all the things you did from a production standpoint and making that happen, where did your business background come from to be able to do that and do it successfully from a financial standpoint?
Well, I never knew what the expression cash is king was until the pandemic.
Got it.
You know, I have always been extremely relationship focused. I love people. Since I probably could before I could talk, I have been surrounded by incredible advisors. So back in 2017, I applied for my first business pitch competition for Accel Lifestyle, and I've done a few since then. And every time I did these competitions, they would randomly pair me with these, I call them business ballers, you know, these business advisors, whether it be a CFO, a CEO, people that actually have, you know, years and years of experience running businesses. And so I'm very fortunate that all of those advisors are still advisors to my companies today. So they had the business acumen and I had the personality and the we can figure this out attitude and the chemistry background. So just kind of all of us put together, just success, I guess, was the only option.
Well, you were selling medical devices, so I think that you had the sales piece of it down pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly right. Yeah. So somebody asked me, when did you start sales? And initially I wanted to say, when I started medical equipment, back in my 20s. And I'm like, no. I always won first place in the Girl Scout cookie competition.
There you go.
Cookies. So, this goes back to, infancy.
Well, you've created two companies. You've had to create supply chains and build all this stuff. As you sort of look back on where you were, where you are now, and how you scaled, what have been the biggest challenges for you? How, in terms of, you mentioned cash is king. I don't know about funding. I don't know building the right team. What have been the biggest challenges that you've had to face?
Funding. I'll say funding number one for sure. Because I was in medical sales and just the way I was raised, I saved every penny. I mean, I've always been a saver. And even when I left my corporate job to pursue creating this fabric, I never would have thought it would have taken as long as it did and as much money as it did. And I tell everyone, it'll cost at least 150% more than you think it will, or it'll take maybe 2 times longer than you think it will. Even if you kind of put in, conservative numbers, it'll take even longer and even more money. I've had to tap into my 401k. I'm always a very honest person. During the pandemic, we made millions, and there was one situation where I had to pay my factory. All my factories have to be paid 100% before they ship the product. I don't get paid for that product until 60 or 90 days after it ships. I didn't understand all that. I just, money's coming in, money's going out. I actually had to go into my 401k to pay for a product because I wasn't going to get paid. This is during the pandemic where the world says, oh man, she's killing it. She's being interviewed by all these people, whatever. But I'm like, little do they know, I had to find cash in order to fulfill a couple of my orders.
Can I use your story in my finance class? Because that's exactly what I talk about. You're selling the product, but if you're having to do it immediately, just what you just said, and you're not getting your money for 60 or 90 days, you got to finance it.
And, I thought I knew, in all these business classes that I took and, accelerator programs, you don't really know what that means until you're sitting in it. And
exactly.
I literally, each one of this is what they mean by when they're teaching me how to put together a spreadsheet, but you can't actually count your revenue earned until 60 to 90 days. And then sometimes it's the next fiscal year. I'm like, this is language I didn't learn in chemistry class, but you find out real quick when you're going through it.
Well, you said it earlier, cash is king. I mean, if you did your financial statement, you would show a profit, significant profit, but the cash you had to finance it.
You just can't pay your suppliers or your employees or anything like that, which tends to irritate them.
But it looks good on paper.
It looks great on paper. And even back when I first started, back in November 2016 is when I left corporate America to really pursue this Accel lifestyle. In 2018, I hired my first gal on my team. And I'm a very frugal person. I did not account for hiring someone before I launched, but some things happened in the business that I needed another person. I didn't have the cash for it. So I asked, and my mom doesn't have a lot of money, but I asked to borrow money to pay for this girl for 1 year for her salary. And it's funny, I didn't tell the girl until probably I think she found out in a podcast about 4 years later that I didn't even have the cash to pay her. But, when you're an entrepreneur, you have to be resourceful and you have to get scrappy. And, it's actually the majority of this journey is not rainbows and butterflies. It's a lot of stress and a lot of strategy on how am I going to succeed to get to the next level.
Well, we probably all run into people who are attracted to the excitement of starting their own business, and they see all the butterflies and the rainbows and everything, and they don't understand the stress that might come with it of understanding. I've got people working for me now. I've got that responsibility to make sure that they are taken care of and whatnot. Are they? When you think of other. You're talking to students now, whether it be in class or whether it be on podcasts or what now. What other areas do you tell them that they better be worrying about before they make that leap?
So I always say, don't quit your day job until you have a bunch of cash saved up. I mean, I would never suggest someone to just go in all in because it's going to take a long time. They say 7 to 10 years for overnight success. I mean, it takes a very long time. I started my business right before the explosion of Instagram, which I'm very fortunate that I did, because if an average person who's not an entrepreneur looks on social media, they think entrepreneurship is glamorous. I'm getting all dressed up, getting all these awards. Absolutely not. It is not. I mean, yes, are there moments of celebration and being with your peers and getting all, sure. But entrepreneurship is I would say it's extremely challenging because there's no right answer. There's no right path to achieve success because everyone's journey is so different. Everyone's product, everyone's service. And back to a question you asked me earlier about challenge and funding, another challenge that absolutely is just as top as funding is I'm always asking myself, there's only so many hours in the day. Am I focusing on today and this week truly what is best for my business? Or am I focusing on things that I'm just good at that might actually not be moving the needle towards success of the business? So it's really important as an entrepreneur to really sit down and take that quiet time and figure out what is it that I need to really scale the business and not get into that trap of just doing all the small things.
Well, as you say that, it makes me think of something that you talked about when I heard you speak in Belmont at the industry. You talked about the fact that you're a very positive person and you have some habits and some things that you do on a daily basis to maintain your positivities. And you were kind enough to share those when I heard you. Share them with our audience now. How do you stay positive on a daily basis?
Thank you for asking that question. You know, it's sometimes we just do things that are natural to us and we don't even really realize we're doing it. And I was interviewed probably about 6 months ago and somebody asked me that question, how do you stay so positive? And I didn't really know the answer. Well, now I actually thought back at my day and I have tangible things that I do every single day. For example, the first one, what song do you wake up to? Or what do you wake up to an alarm in the morning? You know, those annoying beeps or anything ridden with anxiety. Yes, they might get you out of bed, but now you just started your day with anxiety and you haven't even gotten your head off the pillow. So for me, I play Ave Maria when I wake up every morning because it reminds me of my family. I used to, and I say used to, I mean for like 25 years, go right to my phone, right to my work email. And that, I don't do it anymore. It took me a long time to break that habit. But now what I do is I read every morning. And even if it's 10 minutes, I just finished a book. And I'm not a huge book reader, full disclosure. I'm not ever one that says you got to read this book. But I just finished a book and I would read it for about 10 minutes every day. I'm actually going to restart reading it just because it was so instrumental to my mindset throughout the day. I don't work out in the morning. I'm a huge worker-outer, but I work out after work. Another thing I do, big thing I do, is I wear a lot of jewelry. And because my whole family lives in Florida, Rhode Island, not in Texas, I usually have about 10 bracelets on every day and a bunch of rings, and all my jewelry's from people that I love. My dad, I actually think my dad's passed away, but I think I subconsciously got this from him. He worked at General Dynamics in Rhode Island. He sandblasted submarines for 33 years. He carried a coin that he got from one of his best friends who had passed away in his pocket every single day. And I didn't know he carried that coin probably until about 15. I never knew it. He never said anything. But when he passed, I was actually given the coin. So for me, having a tangible something, even if it's a pen you got from a loved one, that just is bringing joy, to your day every day. I volunteer a lot. I've always volunteered a lot. I'm actually, I'm on the UVA University of Virginia alumni board here in Houston over the service. So we're always hosting service events. I'm hosting a charity event this Saturday. And I would say another one is, which is going to sound, I get at least 9 hours of sleep every night.
I ask how you do all these things.
Yeah, sleep. I used to be embarrassed by saying that I need so much sleep. I need sleep. And so I get about 9 hours a night. And the only way that'll be compromised if I'm dancing somewhere. And, that'll keep me out. But I get 9 hours of sleep for sure. But the biggest thing is, the first 10, 15, 20 minutes of your day. And I know it sounds small and people say do all this stuff. It doesn't have to be you laying on a mat and meditating. It's just something that gets you out of your own head to start your day. And so for me, it's so much more than Megan Eddings. And so I get out of my head, the moment I wake up.
So now, I don't know about Gary. I actually have been toying around with wake up songs as well. I wake up to Dreamboat Annie by heart because it starts with some quiet waves and very mellow, and it's not that crazy beeping. So I've taken that to heart. So thank you.
Were you doing that after you heard my talk? Were you doing that before you heard?
Actually, I was doing it before, but I've played around with various songs, and that's the one that I've come to, at least for the time being. So.
I don't do that yet. But I love music to get me going.
Okay, well, we're gonna work on that, Gary.
Okay.
We're gonna work on your wake up
future,
song.
okay.
We're gonna work on your wake
Maybe
up
we
song.
can get our audience to give us some
There
ideas.
you go.
That's right. I've got some AC/DC that I think you would enjoy.
I do like AC/DC.
All right.
I do.
So Megan, when you look into the future, a lot of times when people talk about building their business, they say you got to have an exit plan. I'm not so sure I agree with that, but I don't know what your thoughts are on that. And that is this what you plan to do for an extended period? Do you say, hey, some big company should come buy me? What's your thought process?
This changes, and I agree with you 100%. Like when you're an entrepreneur, especially when you're newer, people say, "What's your exit plan?" And I always felt really uncomfortable with that question because I never thought I'd be an entrepreneur. So for me to know what my plan is, I don't know. And I'm still not really sure. If I had to put a crystal ball out there right now, I would say I absolutely love being an entrepreneur. And so once you become an entrepreneur, you see so much room for improvement in the world and other areas. So perhaps someday I'll sell Accel Lifestyle with my fabric and the gowns. So my gowns are actually, my medical gowns are sold by Siemens Medical. Talk about full circle. So I may see if they want to buy my gown someday and try something else. But right now I'm just focusing on, enjoying the journey and really, like I mentioned earlier, making sure every day that I'm focusing on things that are going to move the needle, whatever the needle may be that week forward.
Well, I think that's you question that, Jeff, and Megan's kind of saying the same thing. I mean, if you start the business and you still love it, you need to say, well, I have an exit plan, so I have to sell. Why would you do that if you still love what you're doing?
Yeah. No, and things change. You never know. We don't anticipate pandemics or who knows what might be coming down the pike. So who knows? Well, Megan, we really appreciate you joining us today. It's been a pleasure getting a chance to meet you, having you on our podcast. We always like to have our guests do a little lightning round. You up for that today?
I'm ready.
Okay. Well, this month's lightning round is sponsored by Ned Ryerson Insurance. Whole life, auto, flood, home. You can't have enough insurance. Right, Gary? Am I right?
Absolutely.
All right. Stay safe with Ned Ryerson Insurance. You can check them out on the internet. So, Megan, we've got some quick questions. Don't overthink it. Here we go. First off, what is your biggest pet peeve?
People that are late to meetings.
That's a good one. What topping do you put on your pizza?
All the meat.
All the meats. Okay. Do you have a favorite vacation spot?
Beach. Anything to do with the beach.
Texas Beach?
Hell no. No, Galveston doesn't cut it. No, I mean, we're going to Cabo in a few weeks for my husband's 40th birthday. And being from Rhode Island, I just love beaches.
Okay. Beatles, Rolling Stones, or Taylor Swift?
Rolling Stones.
Do you have a favorite Halloween candy?
Oh, Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. Whoever answers differently, we can't be friends.
No, that's a little harsh, but it's a good answer. Okay.
Well,
All right. And last question. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
to be able to help more people.
Well, that's a very nice answer. You're not very selfish, but we appreciate your answer. That's good. All right, you passed the lightning round test. Congratulations. Thank
God.
You've been a wonderful guest.
Absolutely.
And we always like to end the podcast by giving shout outs to interesting businesses that we've come across. Megan, you have anybody you want to give a shout out to?
You know, if this was a 3-hour podcast, I could just go on and on and on. But there's one gal, her name's Kalia Guillory. She's a friend here in Houston. And I met her back in it's funny about spreadsheets. I met her at a finance class for entrepreneurship. She owns Nap Bar, Napbar. And she was an executive at a bank, and she was living outside of Houston and this is before the pandemic, and was driving into the city for work all the time. And she's like, man, I'm exhausted. So she was taking little naps in her car. And she said, what if there was a cool spot just to go and get a 20-minute nap? She is blowing up. And I don't think she's made the official announcement yet, but I'll put it to you this way. I travel a lot in airports and I'm always tired. something with an airport, may or may not be announced really soon with Nat Bar. So I couldn't be more proud of her, for sure.
Well, and Gary's office is a good place for napping as well, I've found. So,
When I'm talking, that's how he goes to sleep.
Anyway, that's
It's like the Seinfeld episode. Just got to go under your desk. No one will know.
Well, we might have to look for her for a future guest on the podcast. So that sounds interesting.
She's incredible. She has possibly more energy than I do.
Maybe not. We're not sure we can handle that.
Yeah.
All right, Gary, do you have a small business or a business you want to talk about?
I do. Thanks, Jeff. The one I want to spotlight has been around for a little while now, but I didn't know anything about them until a few weeks ago when we were wanting to get a gift for one of our employees, and we wanted to find something unique. And Jaretta, one of our key employees, recommended Little Mountain Mums.
Little Mountain Mom, okay.
Maidens. Have you heard of it?
I have not heard of it.
No. This is a hardworking family business that grows and sells the biggest and best mums in the world.
Okay.
Megan, do you know what a mum is?
Oh, I love mums.
There you go. Well, so now we may have another customer for it.
It's my second favorite Halloween candy, Mums.
No, then
No?
You don't know mums. Well, you might.
Okay.
Eat them. You could.
Okay.
So we bought one of the mums for our employee who loved it, but all the other employees loved it. And then I found out they truly are big and beautiful. And people are buying them all over the place. And they have sold over 10,000 mums. And they only sell from August to October. And they're beautiful. I mean, they're huge. Now, nobody can see us on the podcast as I'm putting my hands out. But
Bigger than a bread box. Okay.
They're much bigger than a bread box.
Okay.
And I looked, like I said, this morning, to see anything unique about it when they told me they sold over 10,000 mums, and they were out today.
Okay. Well,
Otherwise,
congratulations.
I would have brought one to the podcast.
All right. Well, congratulations, Little Mountain Mom. Sounds like they got it going.
It was pretty cool.
So, well, I want to give a shout out, and Megan might even know this company. I don't know, but it's a company called TS Designs in Burlington, North Carolina. They are a custom T-shirt manufacturer and printer, and they focus also on creating domestic and sustainable shirts. They've been in business since the late 1970s, and they really took a hit when NAFTA went in place in 1993. But they made a decision that they were going to figure out how to make it work here in the United States, and with sustainable products. They focus on people, planet, and profits, and they are a certified B Corporation, which is a for-profit corporation that focuses on social and environmental performance. They've created a truly dirt-to-shirt T-shirt with all made all made in the USA, with all the materials made here in the USA. They use cotton grown here in the United States. They've come up with reactive and natural dyes to dye their shirts. And they've also focused on supply chain. They have a website called wearyourclothing.com, wear, W-H-E-R-E, where if you buy one of their shirts, you can actually put in a code to see where the cotton was grown, where all the materials came from here in the United States. And they're really into working with farms and doing the whole process right. I saw a demo where they were using marigold flowers to dye some of their garments into a beautiful gold. So it was really pretty cool. So if you go to tsdesigns.com, you can learn about them, and just sort of a cool company to check out. So
Very cool.
Anyway, if you are listeners, if you have a suggestion for the small business of the month, you can email them to us at exchange@themesh.tv, and we appreciate your thoughts there. Megan, we want to thank you for joining us today. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been great, yes.
We want to thank the Mesh Podcast Network. If you go to themesh.tv, you can see all the cool podcasts that they've got going on, from business to health to funny stuff to a little bit of everything. So go check them out at themesh.tv. And again, we'll look forward to talking with everybody again next month. Thanks a lot, Megan. Have a good one.
Thank you so
Everybody
much.
enjoy.
Have a great day, guys.
You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.